point of the trauma and the torture, not only to just split your mind, is to also allow breaks in what we call the subtle bodies so that these entities can enter. And it is my devout personal opinion and from experience that the entities are a crucial part of this. So I had to get strong enough to remove and block these entities so that they couldn't run the altars or the programs. So as far as once you remove the entity, I know this is a little complicated, but once you remove the entity, you're still left with that part of you that knows the programming, but you can take control of that and basically subsume that so that, there's still remnants in there of those parts of me, but nobody controls me but my true self. It's not so much about annihilating darkness. It's about bringing darkness back into balance through what they refer to in anthroposophy as the Christ impulse. So you've got, for me, there were significant two of the highest dark figures. It wasn't, I know a lot of people will say, like, there's Christ and then there's Satan. Well, for me, there's more figures than that. There's a lot. Okay, these are beings that have personality, abilities, extreme intelligence, cleverness, beyond current human intelligence and cleverness. And these beings have been around a very long time. They are a part of our earthly realm, but everything has gotten way out of balance. So in other words, they are pretty much running the material physical world situation. Okay, we always have access to this other benevolence that can help to bring this back into balance. I know some of these beings personally, as in the astral world, the world where when we go to sleep at night, our astral body goes out.
Yes, finally, someplace livable.
And rejuvenate, and there's an interaction.
Go if you insist.
Get started all over again. These beings in mind control have become part of the astral. So for someone like me, I was literally programmed by them.
What a sound suggestion.
Intentionally a part of even what was happening, say, on military bases.
You have obviously given considerable thought to the future of this group. I accept the charge, gladly.
These entities were a part of that. They could come into that scene and participate in that. As a matter of fact, I will go so far as to say, and this is not condoning any human action, okay? But I would go so far as to say that a lot of the people that are involved in this are under their own mind control from these beings. They are devoted to them.
What is it now?
Great delusion and illusions about what these beings are. And
very well.
I have hidden myself well.
Every human involved in this is expendable to these beings. There are black magicians at the highest levels, and honestly, we don't see them publicly. Okay, the people we're seeing publicly, as far as I'm concerned, okay, these are, the Klaus Schwabs,
I have hidden myself well.
The Rothschilds. These are all frontmen, and they're gaining something through this, or so they believe. But they're all expendable. Okay, and that's where I see the mind control coming in, is where they think they're really.
I shall go forth at your command.
Whatever it is, and as far as I can see, these beings, as far as humans go, they're very envious of humanity. They're very envious of the physical life that we live, and they can't physically incarnate. But they're, in my opinion, they're working on that. That's what transhumanism is for anybody who hasn't looked at transhumanism. Ultimately is complete and utter global, possibly even solar system mind control. Meaning controlling the planets, controlling the sun, controlling every living thing is what I call transhumanism, is moving into that aspect. So this is part of their desire of these beings. Now, these beings, as far as I'm concerned, are running all of these perpetrators, willingly or unwillingly. And I believe the willingness really comes at the higher levels. I think that as you move down the hierarchy, that people in the lower levels may not completely understand what it is they're dealing with. They may be caught in, for example, all the rewards on the physical level. You know, the money, the greed, the power, the so forth, and not really does everybody understand what's at the higher levels of this. But there are very powerful black magicians at the higher levels. Quote, satanic rites bind top global elites to the will of an egregore used by a force that is inimical to humanity, as it has been for millions of years. An evolving consciousness responsible for its free will, this egregore and the force it serves intend to contain the human spirit in matter, and she put i.e. AI-run brain-computer interface, so it can be utterly controlled.
I hear you well enough.
The blood sacrifices serve two purposes: to feed this force and to terrify minions into absolute submission. Royalty able to survive the centuries have submitted. Otherwise, their bloodline would be eliminated and another take its place. Thus we see how the past still dominates. The freedom of the true individuality on the earth is a long haul of many lifetimes. And I don't know if people understand what an egregore is, but I'll go ahead and define that. It's an occult concept, and it represents an entity, non-physical, that arises from the collective thoughts of a distinct group of
The
people.
best leaders also
A group thought form created intentionally or unintentionally. It becomes autonomous with the power to influence for better or worse. These technologies are being developed really by the entities themselves through people. This is a way for them to access and come into our realm and attempt to come into us as individuals. Well, I was MK Ultra from 1962. For those that don't know, that was a CIA government program for mind control. They had hundreds of sub-projects in it. Of course, the names have changed over the years, but the projects have not ceased. A lot of it's gone corporate now, intelligence and corporate. And I was from birth trauma-based mind control, which is a very scientific, esoteric form of mind control that they, I would say, took from, even though I believe it's eons old in many respects, they took from what happened in Germany during the Nazi occupation. A lot of the scientists came over to the US under Project Paperclip. They really came up with an amazing science of trauma-based mind control, which involves a lot of traumas and torture, a lot of sexual traumas, electricity, drugs, hypnosis, machinery. I was taken to many bases and so forth and programmed right from the get-go. And then what they do is they create what we call multiple personality disorder. It has been changed to dissociative identity disorder. I prefer multiple personality disorder because it really tells you what it is. They create amnesic walls and alternate personalities so that when one personality is called up and holding the body and the mind, the other parts of you have no idea what's taking place. So you wind up going through a life with a lot of missing time. At times years were missing, literally, the better part of decades, until things start to, what I call, bleed through. The human spirit is an amazing thing, and the divinity that runs through us is an amazing thing, and it's always been a problem for the programmers. And it's very common in later years for parts of it to start slipping through, and when that happens, then you eventually start looking for help if you realize you're not crazy. And if you're fortunate, you find people who understand that this has been taking place for many decades. And I didn't go to a deprogrammer. I basically deprogrammed myself. I don't trust deprogrammers. I'll say that right up front. I think it's another way in to reprogram a lot of people. there are some therapists now globally who are aware and are actually attempting to help people. But when I came out, that was really almost non-existent. So I'm spreading the word. I didn't start what I call deep deprogramming until I was 46. For about 12, 15 years prior, I was trying to find help. But I also had a lot of, I was still being used in losing time and so forth. That doesn't happen anymore. And deprogramming to me, just in a nutshell, we can get into it in a little more detail, is engaging my alters once they feel safe, engaging them over many months, many years, and putting the pieces of the puzzle together and releasing them from what they went through. It's kind of hard to describe, but that's basically the easiest way to talk about it. So I'm now 61 and alive and thriving well, and they pretty much leave me alone. They remind me once in a while that they think they own me through targeting or somebody showing up. But it's pretty rare now, but they don't have access anymore, and they know they don't have access anymore. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
So in the beginning, I want to throw this out there in the beginning, because I've done it with interviews or videos or documentaries or even movies I've watched. I may watch the first 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I don't know, and then I just go to something else. So let's go ahead and throw out something that's very crucial. Well, first off, where would you like people to, if somebody has something to say, if they want to reach out to you, what's the best way to get in contact with you, and where would you like people to buy your books?
I wrote 2 books early on while I was still deprogramming, and I did that intentionally so that when people read it, other victims read it, they would not think they're crazy, because it sounds like somewhat crazy talk. Those were 2 books called Our Life Beyond MK Ultra, Book 1 and Book 2. I put those 2 books together just this past year with a publisher, logosophiabooks.com. There will be a link, I understand, in the show. And I put the 2 books into one, and because I had a publisher, I made 36 collages, which I've been told are pretty phenomenal. They're colored collages, and I was able to put them in the new book in color, which is a whole different experience, as well as many updates, not only personal updates of things that have happened for me over the years, but our global situation. Very, very important for people to understand the link between things like MK Ultra and mind control and what's happening on a global scale. So I bring a lot of that in, and I also bring in a lot of the spiritual aspect for me. It's been a very spiritual journey for me in the healing. So you can go to logosophiabooks.com. That way, my publishers and I actually get a little more money for it. It is available on like Amazon and Barnes & Noble, but we get a lot less when we sell them from there. And so I just want to throw this out really quick. Stay with this, because my job it's not just about my story and who I was. This is about what's happening. And the level of technology that we're under, which most people wouldn't believe in the black. What we're under on the surface is getting pretty crazy, but what's in the black is pretty phenomenal. So, yeah.
So well said. And yes, the links will be in the description of this video, and also the podcast only for the podcast apps out there. So, and secondly, Alyssa, let's before we get into the meat and potatoes and some darker things, let's go ahead and, I guess, how would you best, if somebody needed help deprogramming, what are a few simple tasks or steps or things that they can do personally, collectively, or just things they can change in their life to self deprogram themselves if they wanted to go your route and kind of do it through yourself instead of using somebody else to try to take control over you and deprogram yourself?
And I will say that in the book 2 part, I go into quite a bit of detail in my book about the processes I used. The first thing I would say right up front is, if you are what I would call a true MK Ultra nerd, there can be a lot of programs that can go off for self-destruct. I went through that tremendous amount. Not only self-harm, but literally suicide programs. And it seems to me, and I do go into detail in the book about this, but it seems to me that not only did they program me in a sequence, particular sequence, but it took me about a year to realize that my deprogramming was things were showing up in a sequence to help facilitate me just being destroyed or looking like I was crazy. So even the deprogramming process, as far as I'm concerned, they have set that up in a certain way so that certain things will show up first, which makes you look emotionally out of control. A lot of child alters showed up, so it sounded crazy, but it was all important stuff. But if people don't have the context of this, be careful who you reveal anything to, because if they don't have the context of mind control, a lot of people will wind up in psychiatric units or heavily medicated, and that is not the way to go. That does not assist, especially in the climate of our current age. What a lot of the antidepressants and antipsychotics are laced with, very dangerous stuff. So first of all, I'd say the first thing is you gotta have one support person that you absolutely trust. Okay, and that doesn't mean they have to understand all this and be a deprogrammer. It means someone who will listen to you and keep confidence and support you and encourage you.
And somebody that won't take advantage of you.
Absolutely.
Because you're in a fragile state.
Exactly. So it really needs to be one person you trust. You need to have one support person. Record. Handwriting is the best. I know we're all used to typing in computers, but handwriting is the best. It's actually a link to the subconscious. So just write journals, notebooks, draw pictures, whatever comes forward. Don't try to censor it. Okay, it's not going to make sense, because what happens is if you've got a bunch of alter personalities, you'll get fragments. It's not like a movie where there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. You'll get fragments, okay? And you will likely be bombarded. I call it, and I believe they call it, flooding. So that when the process begins they'll try to overflood you. It's already set up in your system, believe it or not. And just record it. And with time, if you're recording it, and you can do verbal recording, I got to the point where it was 24/7. I'd wake up in the middle of something, and I would just record the fragment on a little hand recorder, and then I could record it later. Drawing, just letting it come out, but you will start to see patterns. What you'll wind up with is like a puzzle, and over time, the pieces will start to come together, and you might have an alter over here that told you this in the middle of something, but the other alters aren't revealing anything, and a year later, you got another piece of that story. And it really does come together and start to make sense. But if you don't record it, you will lose it all. Okay? If something comes in, if you're a multiple, and you're not going to be able to hang on to it. It's just too much information, too many parts of your mind. You will have a lot of super high energy. Because you've got these other parts, and each of them have a bunch of energy, and you may not do a lot of sleeping. I don't think multiples sleep the same way other people do. You have alters that are running, reprogramming all night long. So recording is crucial. A support person is crucial. If you have someone enter, they'll likely, they did with me repeatedly, send people in to try to make their way in, and as a confidant or a lover or the father you never had or whatever.
Like physically or subconsciously? Kind of like a psychic vampire or something.
Physically, for me, there is a lot of remote stuff going on. Okay, we can get into that a little later, but I'm talking on the physical level. So just be cautious. The way I described it was, for me, they knew what I wanted more than I knew what I wanted. So they know your weak point, and they'll try to get back into you through those means. There can be remote stuff going on. I went from not only trauma-based mind control, but I was having remote accessing as early as the late 70s. So this has been around a long time, and it's extremely advanced right now. So you, at nighttime, it's a reprogramming time. They can use the astral, invade your dreams. So just kind of pay attention. And the goal is, by doing this and engaging your altars, you're going to get a better sense of who you really are, who the true part of you is. And the more that happens, the more you understand, the more you are willing to work with this, the more empowerment you're going to have. And you're going to be able to start determining what's what, and they're going to start losing control. Okay, but it is a long process. It's an extremely difficult process. And it can be, I just want to put it out there, it can be somewhat dangerous. So you really need to, depending on what kind of programming you have, you really need to be alert and careful and gentle also with yourself, kind to yourself.
Are you somewhat deprogrammed now? Then do you still find days where some days may be tougher than others because maybe little flashbacks, almost like PTSD? In a way, I don't mean like a battled soldier just came from war, because you said you're deprogrammed, so it's much better. But once in a while, does things just hit you just like that? Memories.
Absolutely, and it's not like I'm really recovering a lot of memory anymore. I mean, that happened. It was an insane amount. I mean, it was like really overload. But it's more like, okay, I kind of transitioned into remote technologies, so I can still be targeted from a distance. What they know is they don't have access. There's no, I'm gonna go ahead and say it like this, Michael, because this is an important part of it. There's no more entities running the show here in this body and this mind. Once the entities are removed, for me, my viewpoint of this is you don't have successful total mind control programming without the entities. They're part of handling the altars. So you'll have physical handlers, but the point of the trauma and the torture, not only to just split your mind, is to also allow breaks in what we call the subtle bodies, so that these entities can enter. And it is my devout personal opinion and from experience that the entities are a crucial part of this. So I had to get strong enough to remove and block these entities so that they couldn't run the altars or the programs. So as far as once you remove the entity, I know this is a little complicated, but once you remove the entity, you're still left with that part of you that knows the programming, but you can take control of that and basically subsume that, so that, there's still remnants in there of those parts of me, but nobody controls me but my true self. And even the powers that reach out remotely know that. They know they can't get me to do anything or, act on any of those programs or tasks. They don't exist anymore. And that is me becoming sovereign. That's how I look at it. But you have to understand, they spend a lot of money and a lot of time, so from their mindset, I'm government property. So they'll act that way throughout the rest of this incarnation for me. But what I know is they have no control, and I'm sovereign. And a lot of people don't really understand what sovereignty is. As far as I'm concerned, Michael, I mean, they're always going to outgun me, right? I mean, in the physical material, they're always going to have more weapon systems and tactics and methods and programs. But on a spiritual level, it took a while for me to realize that was my recourse. That was me regaining myself, was spiritually coming to an understanding and exercising that right as a divine being of God. And that is where my true protection and sovereignty came in. So it was the process.
So you were talking about entities. In your book, Our Life Beyond MK Ultra Then and Now, Chapter 8, I got a quote here. Many who read this will have one or more reasons for not accepting the supernatural, either due to personal, intellectual beliefs or spiritual ones that denounce the reality of evil. But the reality of evil as part of humanity's ancient and ongoing history cannot
I shall
continue
go
to be
forth at your
denied.
command.
Malevolence is real and not sourced in the bad
With all
intentions of men
speed,
and women.
comrade.
Our use of our words, entities, and demons may or may not be consistent with official definitions, but our intention is to present malevolence in the various forms we have systematically, consistently, and frequently encountered throughout our life, including the consciousness of our front altars. Both demonology and black tech are used in total mind control programming, but the malevolent forces behind our I think I did a goof right there. Our MK Ultra programming, maybe. Not sure. It says TMK programming. Is that something different?
Yeah, I abbreviate total mind control.
Okay.
In the name of the council, I am here to keep order.
Total mind control programming are very real and have for eons controlled the men and women through whom they work. We have learned this through being terrorized at the hands of our programmers, controllers, and handlers, and through our ability to significantly affect these malevolent ones by intensely and repeatedly focusing on creation rather than destruction.
Let me have a taste.
So, well said, well written. That was deep. So, and the book is really deep. So I highly recommend everybody to look at this book, to get the book, her books, all of them. And so with these entities, you kind of struck a chord with, or you made me kind of think a while ago. Without putting words in your mouth, you said something about entities that were controlling you or something like that. So that's on my level. Like that's weird. With me being a podcaster, interviewer for 13 years now, that's things I like to tackle. Things like that. Things that are deep, dark, and try to get a better understanding. So explain what do you mean by that, and a little bit more in detail. And are these entities the actual controllers? And do they have control over the government, the deep state, whatever name you want to call it, or is it the other way around? The shadow figures within our government, whatever, or in the world, do they have control over these entities?
Really good question, putting that all together. And this is extremely important, and is going to become even more important with every passing day, year, hundreds of years, thousands of years in human evolution. It really is. This has been in our past, it is in our present, and it's going to be in our future. There are both sides. There's benevolence, but I grew up with the malevolence. I was immersed in that involuntarily. But I've now come to know there's also another side. There's benevolence at work here. It's not so much. This is how I look at it with my studies. It's not so much about annihilating darkness. It's about bringing darkness back into balance through what they refer to in anthroposophy as the Christ impulse. So you've got, for me, there were significant two of the highest dark figures. It wasn't. I know a lot of people will say, like, there's Christ and then there's Satan. Well, for me, there's more figures than that. There's a lot. Okay, these are beings that have personality, abilities, extreme intelligence, cleverness, beyond current human intelligence and cleverness. And these beings have been around a very long time. They are a part of our earthly realm, but everything has gotten way out of balance. So in other words, they are pretty much running the material physical world situation. Okay, we always have access to this other benevolence that can help to bring all this back into balance. I know some of these beings personally, as in the astral world, the world where when we go to sleep at night, our astral body goes out and connects, is supposed to connect with our angel and rejuvenate, and there's an interaction there, and then we wake up in the morning and we get started all over again. Well, these beings have, in mind control, have become a significant part of the astral. So for someone like me, I was literally programmed by them. They were intentionally a part of even what was happening, say, on military bases, when I was being tortured and mind was being split and or programming was taking place. These entities were a part of that. They could come into that scene and participate in that. As a matter of fact, I will go so far as to say, and this is not condoning any human action, okay? But I would go so far as to say that a lot of the people that are involved in this are under their own mind control from these beings. They are devoted to them. They are under great delusion and illusions about what these beings are and what they're going to gain from this. And I always state this: every human involved in this is expendable to these beings. Okay, they will use anything.
I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry, but and please keep elaborating on this. But so basically, what you're saying is that I hate to say elites, but we don't know what to call these physical puppet masters that flesh and blood here on Earth. So they were in mind control by these beings.
I believe so. Yeah.
Well, it makes sense. It makes sense because maybe that. And that's probably their biggest downfall, is to trust their beings and to believe that they have control over themselves.
Absolutely. And you have to remember, in a lot of these families, these are generational families where these people are raised. They're raised in this. Okay, they're indoctrinated and programmed themselves. Now, I'm not saying there aren't any that aren't aware of what's going on. There are black magicians at the highest levels, and honestly, we don't see them publicly. Okay, the people we're seeing publicly, as far as I'm concerned, are frontmen. Okay, these are, the Klaus Schwabs, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds. These are all frontmen, and they're gaining something through this, or so they believe. But they're all expendable. Okay, and that's where I see the mind control coming in, is where they think they're really gonna wind up with something, in the end of whatever it is. And as far as I can see, these beings, as far as humans go, they're very envious of humanity. They're very envious of the physical life that we live, and they can't physically incarnate. But in my opinion, they're working on that. That's what transhumanism is. For anybody who hasn't looked at transhumanism, ultimately is complete and utter global, possibly even solar system mind control, meaning controlling the planets, controlling the sun, controlling every living thing, is what I call transhumanism, is moving into that aspect. So this is part of their desire of these beings. Now, these beings, as far as I'm concerned, are running all of these perpetrators, willingly or unwillingly. And I believe the willingness really comes at the higher levels. I think that as you move down the hierarchy, that people in the lower levels may not completely understand what it is they're dealing with. They may be caught in, for example, all the rewards on the physical level. The money, the greed, the power, the so forth, and not really does everybody understand what's at the higher levels of this. But there are very powerful black magicians at the higher levels that work. I know this probably sounds crazy to a lot of people, that like it's an outdated thing. But they're working on global scales, controlling nations, controlling countries, controlling, and there's a term that people should look up called egregore, and I do put it in the book. It's very important to understand these concepts, because you without them, without that aspect, without that perspective, it becomes simply a more physical, material perspective of, well, if I turn my Wi-Fi off at night, I'm good to go, which is a really good thing, by the way. Everybody should be doing that. But that in and of itself isn't sufficient to understand what's really taking place here. So, but these beings have been around a very, very long time. I interacted with them in the astral. I was even in deep deprogramming when I became more lucid. There was a very concerted effort by them on occasion to try to get me to acquiesce voluntarily at night because they knew I was coming out of what I had been taken into involuntarily, and so they really want people to voluntarily acquiesce to them. If you don't do that, then they're really just doing smoke and mirrors and deception, and that's not the same thing for the soul. So I do believe there are people that have voluntarily at the higher levels turned their soul over to these beings, and that to me is the ultimate of mind control. That falls outside of the physical world of mind control, and it becomes, we've all heard the term, you sold your soul. Well, that's a very real thing. And I've had discussions with other people who are, there's a term we use, bloodline, which means generations of worship or interaction with these beings, and generations of propensity because of that for subsequent generations to be, how would I say it, as if there's a potential at birth because there's been so many generations prior. So this is very real for them. It's not just trying to terrorize people, that's part of it. Actually I do want to read something, and I don't have it here. This is about what we're talking about here, about bloodlines and so forth, and I think it's really important. And actually this is something that my friend Ilana Freeland put on Facebook back in January 2020. And I don't know how I found it. She must have forwarded it to me. And I contacted her and said, I'm going to use this because this is like spot on. And she said, yeah, go for it. So every once in a while I like to read this on a show because it really explains a lot of the questions people have about the elite and bloodlines and how does this work? So she posted this after she listened to that international tribunal, the ITCCS. There were a lot of people coming on and talking about their experiences with satanic ritual abuse and mind control. And she put this woman this Dutch woman, she doesn't recall the name, her testimony. And after that, Ilana wrote this up and posted it. Quote, satanic rites bind top global elites to the will of an egregore used by a force that is inimical to humanity, as it has been for millions of years. An evolving consciousness responsible for its free will, this egregore, and the force it serves intend to control or intend to contain the human spirit in matter, and she put i.e. AI-run brain-computer interface, so it can be utterly controlled. The blood sacrifices serve two purposes: to feed this force and to terrify minions into absolute submission. Royalty able to survive the centuries have submitted. Otherwise, their bloodline would be eliminated and another take its place. Thus we see how the past still dominates. The freedom of the true individuality on the earth is a long haul of many lifetimes. And I don't know if people understand what an egregore is, but I'll go ahead and define that. It's an occult concept, and it represents an entity, non-physical, that arises from the collective thoughts of a distinct group of people. A group thought form created intentionally or unintentionally, it becomes autonomous with the power to influence the other rulers. So you can have, as far as I'm concerned, there are massive egregores globally now that are produced through a lot of this black magic and a lot of the negative outcomes of that. whether that's 9/11 or mass mind control or any number of things. You can also have very small egregores. I'm a person who moves around and house sits. I'm very perceptive because of my history. I see things that a lot of other people don't. And I've been on properties where I've noticed.
You glitched out there.
Own egregores.
Somebody doesn't want us to, for you to speak your books and your experiences.
Yeah.
You were just saying you glitched out for a second. Everything's good now. You were just saying you were sitting with people or something like that, and leave off from there.
I have hidden myself well.
Oh, right. Okay. So I house sit and I move around. And so I've even discovered small egregores over people's properties because of what's going on in the household or the relationship. They can create kind of a heaviness that can grow if that situation is propagated and continues on. And then, of course, we have the global egregores. I think there are massive egregores. And what is really important to understand about these things is they become a being of sorts. And once they are developed, they're autonomous and they will do anything to survive. So there's a lot of influence, and it's my belief that the powers that be at the highest levels understand all of these things. They understand the esoteric side of things. They understand that spellbinding is real on a massive scale, not only on an individual scale. And I think this is the part that has been missing from a lot of the narrative of mind control. Because there's a lot of, not a lot, but there were some of my predecessors that spoke of the esoteric aspect as simply, it was only used for trauma, it wasn't real. Not true. It is real. The beings are real, evil is real, or malevolence is real. And it's important for people to understand that we each have a responsibility in our daily thoughts, our lives, our actions, to help to bring that back into balance with the good so that things aren't as crazy as they seem in the world today.
Well said. And so with egregore, it's very similar, if not the same thing as the tulpa. The concept in theosophy, mysticism, paranormal of an object or beings that is created through spiritual or mental powers. So with you talking about that, and that was well said. And I just interviewed Lana Freeland
Excellent.
a week or two ago. She's the one that pointed me to you, said
great.
that I need to interview you. But with tulpas, egregores, and that little piece that you read with Lana Freeland, where does that play with like mental psychosis and things of people with, let's say, schizophrenia? Are they really schizophrenia, like, you know what I mean? Or is there some kind of entity attachment there?
This is absolutely, in my opinion, absolute possession.
My wife is also a psych nurse also. She works in psych.
Oh, wow. Well, then she's got some stories. There was a guy that worked in a doctor that worked, I forget his name right now, but I'll try and find him and send it to you if I can find it. He went into this field and he was working with schizophrenics, and he started doing some research, really because he didn't believe there was a spiritual aspect to it. And what he wound up discovering was, through working individually with patients, that when he brought the spiritual aspect in, for example, Psalm 23, he had several of the patients start using Psalm 23, which is, you know it, I say it all the time. And as soon as I try to say anything publicly, I forget it, but the Lord is my shepherd.
Yes.
And
I was looking up the doctor.
You know who I'm talking about?
Dr. Samuel Vesere, is that correct or no?
I don't think that's him.
Okay.
I think this guy's a doctor. But anyway, what he wound up doing was he started noticing when the patients came in the room, and I can vouch for this, okay? I can vouch for this as regards multiplicity and the entity aspect. Everything in the room can change. The entire energy, the hair on the back of your neck. And there's many reports of this, okay, that they're not dealing just with the person sitting in front of them. There's a whole nother essence in the room. And so this started working on him. So he started turning to spiritual things and biblical things. And he had some of his patients who were dealing with 24/7 voices start saying Psalm 23. And then he would ask them how things were. And they started to tell him that things were settling down in their heads, that they weren't dealing with it wasn't like a complete exorcism, but they weren't dealing with the magnitude of what they had been dealing with by using Psalm 23. And I can vouch for this because early on I was doing all the physical protections, but as soon as I started using prayer, which I was programmed to avoid, ironically, anything with Jesus or Christ was no-go, right? And that has completely turned around, but I had someone supporting me that said, just pray and I'll tell you how to pray and trust me that it'll work, rather than you don't have to trust it, just start doing it. And if you're desperate enough and you're dealing with this and you think you're going to die any minute and somebody's going to kill you, you pretty much will do whatever you need to do. And that's really important too for other victims. Be willing to do whatever you absolutely have to do. I have had a lot of victims come to me, just as an aside here, a lot of victims come to me and they're not willing to. And that is the difference between deprogramming, truly deprogramming, and finding sovereignty and not. You got to be willing to do anything. You got to be willing to let go of everything. And that means a lot of ideas and concepts that you think you understand, but you're wrong. And that's not an easy journey, okay? But yeah, so he found out that he literally came out and has done some talks about how this is very much. And I walked up to her, and I see we're going unstable again. I walked up to her, and it's always with this stuff. And
we're good now. There was about a 30-second pause. It's weird. It's weird.
Let me tell you what's going on.
It's so weird because.
Let me tell you what's going on.
Seriously. I'm not saying it's a conspiracy, but it might be a conspiracy.
And this is going to be really hard for people. Okay, the technology is entities ride the frequencies. So it's not my opinion that there's a person stopping us. It's my opinion that there's entity interference through the technology that we're dealing with. They ride the frequencies.
Has to be. Everything is good on my end. Your picture quality, everything is good.
It's very specific to, there's a lot of things we can all talk about now. We all know that. They're not censoring everything, but if you really pay attention to where these things come in, for me, it's always in the spiritual aspect. Whether I'm on the phone with someone and we get too far into something that they don't want me to share with the other person, or vice versa, the other person is sharing with me. But it is always the spiritual aspect. It really is. So, and I'm not saying technology is inherently evil. I'm not saying that. We're using it for the right thing. This is part of the sovereignty. This is the age we live in. Tech hasn't gone anywhere. So we need to use it for the right purpose. But make no mistake that with our plasma screens, think about that, plasma screen, okay? These technologies are being developed really by the entities themselves through people. This is a way for them to access, to come into our realm, and it's going to come into us as individuals. So I say that only as I have no fear of the technology. No fear at all. I know what I'm doing. I know what's running this person, and when I go online, I know what it is I'm here to do, and that matters. So I just want to throw that out there. But this is very much a spiritual aspect. This is very important for people to understand that even in mind control, this and in the remote technologies, they're riding the frequencies. When I first started deprogramming, Michael, I had an altar that was shouting it from the rooftops. They're writing the frequencies into all of us. She couldn't say it enough. They're writing the frequencies into all of us. And, 12, 15 years later, that's exactly what's happening with all the satellites, the cell towers, all the contraptions that they're using is to create an ongoing. We're living in a soup. We're living in a soup of electromagnetic energy. If you think that's not penetrating every fiber and cell of your being, it is. It really is. And the dark side knows this. The dark beings know this. I know they know this from personal experience. And some of the experiences I had consciously now in deprogramming with the remote technologies they're incredible. I mean, they really are incredible. And there's always that, there's some guy sitting at a monitor in some facility somewhere. But ultimately, this behind that is something very malevolent. And we can use this tech, and we are designed right now, in this epoch, in this time, to use this technology for the right things. And that can still be done. So they're using it, and we're using it. And that's just the way it's going to be. And those interruptions to me are
everything else is good as long as it happens it could be me or both of us. It's like a 20-second pause, like the video stops wherever you're talking at. I can still see you, but you're paused for like 20 seconds. I'm good, whatever.
Okay.
But
and I've got full bars here, just so you know.
I do too. I know it. It's weird. And this doesn't happen. This rarely happens. Only whenever we talk about very controversial things on this channel. So we're talking about schizophrenia. And I told you my wife is a psych nurse. So I've been waiting to share this little story. She can't tell me names. She can't tell me names, but she can tell me stories. So, baby, you need to write a book. But anyway, I've been waiting to share this for the right situation. In this interview with you, with your traumas, your past, everything you've experienced, this is the right situation to tell you and the audience what she told me. So she had a patient that I'm here in Louisiana and North Louisiana. She had a patient that started out on the East Coast. I'm paraphrasing some. It was Georgia, North Carolina, something like that, South Carolina, and they were on this road trip by themselves, and they were caught here. I forgot what happened, but they were caught here or different places. They got pulled over, and they were asking about Elon Musk. So they finally, I'm paraphrasing because I haven't talked to my wife about this. I should have wrote it down, exactly. But long story short, they finally picked this individual up here in Louisiana, and they could tell he has some kind of psychic break or mental break, paranoid schizophrenia. So, and they questioned him and said, "What are you doing? What are you doing all the way over here? You're almost like 600 miles to 800 miles away. Like, what are you doing all the way over here? Looking for Elon Musk. I need to talk to him. Get on talking about Elon Musk. And so, here's my thing. Do you think he was a possible, if he's not, and he just does have some type of mental parasite or entity attachment? Or could he be used or was utilized as a Manchurian candidate or some type of targeted individual to take out Elon Musk?
It's possible. And
very well.
Personally, I'll just go ahead and say that. I try not to verbally attack people online, but it's my opinion Elon Musk is under some form of working for them, for sure. But that doesn't absolve someone from having a Manchurian candidate who is programmed to them. I speak of this exact situation actually in the book. In my case, with an individual in the UFO community who was very high profile, and I was absolutely programmed with one of my kill alters to take him out. It never took place. I was never sent to do that. But it's very possible that this person, and another aspect, whether it was to take him out or not, they also just can program people, one person, a victim, they can program a victim to someone who's famous, so it just becomes a complete obsession. And it may have a purpose, it may be part of experimenting, whatnot. So, but yeah, it sounds like the obsession was put in by someone.
The reason why I bring that up, because you talk about things that you've gone through of certain people that you were tasked mind control to take out. Can you elaborate on some of those? And I know one of them is Stephen Greer.
That was the one I was referring to that, obviously never took place, but an absolute obsession. And that was used, it's hard to kind of explain it without going into tremendous detail, but I do go into it in the book. And it's my belief that, not my belief, here's what I know about my own personal programming. Most of my kill programming, from what I can see, was utilized to actually take out members of the network itself. So think about that. Okay, so
I think I got it.
I've seen this in deep programming where there are people who have become, in our communities, in our conspiracy, various aspects of our conspiracy community have become very high profile. They've got a message. They're out there doing that message wherever they can. There's a lot of people following them, thinking that these people are telling the truth about the real situation. What I can tell you is there are a lot out there that aren't telling the truth. They're programmed individuals, and that is their job, to be a public person. They don't know it. They don't realize it. They think they're really coming out, so to speak, with something. And so my opinion, for example, in my personal experience with Stephen Greer, is he is a programmed individual. Absolutely, in my mind, he's an MK Ultra type individual, and he's doing his job, as his task as a mind-controlled victim of the things he's spreading about the benevolent, just to summarize, the benevolent aliens, which are not benevolent aliens. They're what I would call malevolent beings. They are what we would refer to as retarded elementals that have been captured by malevolence. They weren't of malevolence in the beginning, but they've been turned, so to speak, and they're captured in this, much like an involuntary MK Ultra victim. For me, I had an altar that was programmed as a devotion to him, and then I had a kill altar that had a kill program to him. And now think about how this can work, because I do have actual kills of unknowns. Nobody would know. I don't know who they were. People wouldn't know who they were, but they were clearly members of the network who had stepped out of line or whatever. And think about this. Let's say someone like Stephen Greer. He's out there, got a huge following, right? He's one of the so-called saviors of the community. If somebody were to take him out, what message would that send to everybody in that community? That would send the message that everything he said was correct, right? And I've seen this with some other individuals, that by taking out someone after a period of time, again, remember, everybody's expendable. By taking someone out that's worked for them in a public capacity, you're validating their message. You're for most of the people that were following it and believing him, that becomes an absolute at that point. So it's a combination of taking people out because they really are telling the truth, and they don't want those things to get out there, or they have a piece of the truth that they're not ready for it to be released, and they have to take these people out. But you've also got another side, which is there's another, I won't go into, there's another spiritual aspect to violent death that I won't try to relay here, but that works for the brotherhoods of the left-hand path, which is basically, the ones that are into the esoteric and spellbinding. So by simply, and I don't mean simply, but by someone being taken out violently, there is a use for them on the other side for the brotherhoods of the left-hand path. Okay, so there's a whole nother esoteric aspect to this. But I think it's important to bring in that not necessarily is every death someone who should be revered as a hero, although I've got an arms list of people that are my heroes who were taken out over the years, over the many decades, that were bringing a piece of the truth out when the powers that be felt at that time that couldn't come out. They're letting a lot out, and a lot of this is indoctrination. So they're indoctrinating the global populace, and that can take decades to get them used to a concept that's perverted and retarded. But over time, it becomes nonchalant. They're doing that with pedophilia. They're trying to really break down the moral and ethical barriers for people. And with enough indoctrination, it actually happens on a mass scale. There will always be those of us who know, this is not right. But we saw this with, and I don't know what words I can use here, we saw this with the current situation that led to jabs, where a mass populace fell in line. And this is Psych 101, okay? And there's a Russian guy, God, what's his name? Yuri something. He came out in the 80s or 90s and did interviews and spoke of this process in National Socialism and exactly how it works. And it's exactly what we see taking place around the globe currently. It's an actual process that is they learned and utilized. And he also said that everybody's expendable, even the people that they use that work for them. Eventually, those people can be taken out because they've already betrayed their own people. So why would we keep them around after we're done using them? So
Yuri Bezmenov?
Yes, that's him. And well worth listening to his interview on YouTube because he just flat out lays it out. And it's exactly the same SOP for what I've been through and what I see taking place on a global scale now. It's exactly the same.
So, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but with, I'm not a fan of Stephen. I've tried to interview him before, send some emails out, and some of his colleagues or whatever, they responded back. And you have to have so many followers and things like of that nature, and it can only be an hour.
Lots of ego there. Yeah.
Oh man! But anyways, with his CE5 kind of protocol, CE5 protocol. So they use consciousness, and I'm paraphrasing, consciousness and the power of intent to lure UFOs and sightings of strange things in the sky. So makes you wonder if, like you said, he isn't mind controlled. I'm not saying he may think that he's doing good things. He probably has a good heart. I don't know. I'm not going to judge his heart, but he may not know that he's mind controlled. So what if these entities, like we talked about, have put him in a state of mind control to push this CE5 protocol and things like that, because you have other things that are coming forward also, other types of protocols, it's a way to leave yourself open for attachment, for mind control. So it's an easier way for them just to take over one's.
And you know the Hollywood version of the vampire, where he comes to your door but you have to invite him in. That's real. That's based on reality. In other words, so what I see them doing is taking groups of people out, calling in the dark forces.
I have nothing you wish.
Whether that's just for and I don't think it stops at just the individual who called it in. This is part of the process. You know, the dark ones want cooperation. They want people to acquiesce to them, because otherwise they've got to use smoke and mirrors and deception, right? They've got to manipulate, they've got to be clever, but the power resides, and I remember discovering this in year one of deprogramming, because I was working with someone who was a bloodliner who had a lifetime of them trying to take him over. They wanted him bad. And he and I had a similar experience of being invited, so to speak. So we both knew that there was some kind of power in getting a person or persons to willingly acquiesce to them. They use a lot of different methods to do that, because the power of that reverberates out from just the individual into, you know, all of humanity. So if you've got a person who is, for whatever reason, spiritually, I won't try to go into explaining this, but spiritually significant in a way. In other words, whatever they came in with to do good, if to me, the powers, the dark powers, know that before you are even born. And there are certain bloodlines that have propensities over the years, right? So if they can get someone of that ilk to voluntarily acquiesce to them, to basically sell their soul, as we call it, which takes many forms. It's not just some woo-woo idea. This takes many forms. There's a lot of power that resides in that. So now I look at what that person is doing, taking groups of people out into these places where these these beings that he's encountering, many of them were part of my programming in the astral for years. I had oodles of so-called alien abduction, alien interaction. And let me tell you this, Michael, in my first year and a half of deep deprogramming, I was absolutely terrified. I was dealing with all kinds of paranormal and physical stuff, people showing up. But the day, and I remember the moment that I realized that the greys, the so-called gray aliens, weren't aliens. I had the full-on realization, body, mind, and soul, that they were demons. I never had another encounter. It just, as if someone threw a light switch. It was done. And why? Because the jig was up. It was done. There was no point in trying to influence me through that means, because now I knew what it was, and there was power in the fact that I understood what I was dealing with. It took the power away from those beings in my life. And I think this is really crucial for people to understand truly what our history has been, what our present is, and what our future possibly holds. People have to get out of the distraction of the everyday world, you know, the things that bring all pleasure and comfort and ease, and they're going to have to start facing what really is. It's not about, like you said, it's not about fear-mongering, because when you go through what really is on the other side of that is what I call true empowerment, is what you can find as sovereignty. And I remember the moment for me in deep deprogramming when I lost the fear. It wasn't about fear anymore. It was about engaging what showed up. And I remember saying this to them, I'm the watcher now. Meaning, I'm going to record everything, I'm going to tell everybody everything, and I'm going to do it without any emotion, no fear, no getting upset. Just bring it on, so that I can reveal it. And when you hit that place, it's incredibly empowering. Life changes for you. What you interact with, and I will tell you that since that time, there have been very visible experiences with the benevolent side, meaning I have been shown that they're there too, and they've been there all along.
I have hidden myself
Very, very palpable few experiences in recent years that have shown me they're as real as the dark side is real. And they're here for us if we're willing to face what is, all of it. It's really the process. And to me, that process is developing an inner life. That's what the inner life is about. Not shying away, becoming a witness to other people's experiences. Don't worry about, the doctors and the university trained. Talk to the everyday man, the one that's got boots on the ground, as they say, and is experiencing things. And listen to what they're saying. Keep an open mind. Don't just relegate it to the trash bin because it doesn't fit into your belief system. We all need to be doing this, and it's challenging. It's really challenging. But this, to me, is the solution to what we're up against.
And definitely, there's a lot of people out there that show levels of cognitive dissonance, and they're not willing to break through those mental belief structures. But you said something a while ago. You probably saw me kind of nod my head and kind of smiled. You said something about fear.
I have hidden myself well.
You mentioned fear, and what I'm about to read you, I've asked this a handful of times through other interviews. I always save my notes because there might be certain things I may want to ask certain authors or researchers or whatever on the podcast. So let's use the Wi-Fi and computer metaphor. I would say our brain is like a hard drive, and our pineal gland acts like the transmitter that can pick up these Wi-Fi signals, such as a computer does. Our soul could act in similar ways that a Wi-Fi signal does to our computer-related devices. Maybe when we are in the womb of a pregnant woman, our mother, possibly in the developmental phase of that fetus, maybe that woman's pineal gland picks up and transmits an incoming Wi-Fi signal, aka the soul, and somehow it transmits that signal to the child. And could that be a reason why they are keeping us in a perpetual state of fear and anxiety so that they can hack these entities, whatever they are, can hack somehow the incoming soul, aka Wi-Fi signal, before it becomes implanted into the baby? But none of this can be possible if first they're manufactured. I guess artificial reality doesn't come through fruition. So, what do you think about that? And is that one way that they are? Let's say that one agenda here is to keep us in a perpetual state of fear and anxiety because we're more easily controllable. People that in this community know that.
I have hidden myself.
But so is it easier to have cogs in the machine like non-player characters, or people that have mental psychosis, mental problems, or just mind control people out there that think they're perfectly normal? It's because they grew up.
What is it now?
My mother, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, they lived in this world of constant state of fear and anxiety, wars, rumors of wars, everything. So people, when you're in a constant state of fear, does that woman that's pregnant, our mother,
I shall go
our
forth at your
grandmother
command.
that was pregnant with our mother,
The best leaders also.
is it easier for them to be implanted with some type of programming? Because when you're in a constant state of fear, our mother is, I'm not saying ours, because I feel like we're all mind controlled on one level, but they're in a lower vibrational state if they're in a constant state of fear. So is this entity attachment easier to take place when they're in the developmental stages of the fetus and a pregnant woman that is living in a world of constant state of fear and anxiety.
It makes sense to me.
It's hard to explain that because I have it all up here, but it's hard to put it.
Well, it makes sense to me because one of the methods in MK Ultra, in my generation, and the ones before me, is they traumatize the mother while the baby's in the womb. So they start traumatizing before you're even born. And absolutely, that has an effect. And another subsequent effect to this, what I see in current generations of younger people, is that when you start to understand the developmental process from, like, say, birth to age 7, when you start to understand that you not only have a physical body, an etheric body, an astral body, and the bodies go out from there, but these subtle bodies outside of the physical body are a significant, there's significant things that need to happen for them to develop properly. And if those things aren't taking place, and as you say, if children are being born to a mother that's in fear, and then they're being born into a world of this fear and this constant bombardment of violence and fear, that child, current generations, are not getting necessarily the atmosphere that they require for those, like the astral body, to develop properly. This will have a role in their interaction with other human beings, with the world at large. For example, Rudolf Steiner came up with Waldorf education. I'm a student of Rudolf Steiner and his works. And Waldorf education was designed to create the desired atmosphere from certain ages, from birth to 7, and then from 7 to 14, there were different stages of development for a child. And so when I look at the world at large and the technology, kids are on technology right from the get-go. This is tremendously wrong for their development. So I do see it as there is a very esoteric side to all of this, but it's being implemented in a physical material world. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I know of a particular friend of mine who's MK Ultra / bless his heart, 24/7. 24/7 targeting and being accessed all the time at night, like every night. This guy's 70. Okay, he's almost 70 years old. But when he was born in a military hospital, they took him from his mother as soon as he came out of the womb, and she didn't even get him until 10 days later. So they were working on that right from the beginning. And I don't know, I can't speak to what her condition was while he was in the womb, but in other words, they get that this needs to happen. And they've always understood that this needs to happen right from the start. Now, I will make a caveat to that, which is the remote technologies now they don't need to do that anymore. They can pick anyone, anywhere, anytime, at any age. So they can read your brainwaves, your neurology from a distance, and if you have a propensity, like you grew up in a shitty household, or they can recognize that from those readings and start targeting you from a distance. So there's still going, as far as I'm concerned, there's always going to be the hands-on, because there's a bunch of sadists out there and they enjoy that shit. But we've now morphed into a world where it's really important for people to understand this. It's not just about that MK. This is a global possibility, anywhere, anytime, and that is the ultimate goal. We're not there yet, though. We are in a world where the whole world is not total mind controlled. Total mind control is people need to look at what that really is. We are in a world, though, that is under extreme conditioning.
I was just about to say that. We may not be in it. Everybody, you just read my mind.
And that can lead into a world of total mind control. But there's very specific protocols for total mind control, but they understand that extreme conditioning, like you're talking about, with tremendous fear 24/7, has a very profound effect on mass populations. So I want to clarify this, because when you put someone under total mind control, when you use all those protocols, you create alternate personalities and amnesic walls in the mind and so forth. That person doesn't have a choice. Conditioned people have a choice. We still have a choice on a global level. So this is really important for people to understand. You are not under total mind control yet, but that is the goal across the board. So, you're being bombarded. It's true. We're living in a soup of electromagnetics. I mean, everybody I talk to, no matter where they live, is experiencing this. They have down days, then they have up days, then they have down days, exhaustion, mind fog. We're living in this. This isn't going to go away. So it's a matter of learning how to overcome this, how to manage your lives. It's not about eradicating it, because 5G is here, 6, 7. I heard something today on a video about AI, and they mentioned 10G.
Yep, you just read my mind again.
This isn't going away. We're not going to stop the chemtrails. It's on its own now. So it's about managing your way through this, and that requires not only physical things, but it requires spiritual, inner life. It absolutely requires it. That's what we're up against.
I like the ultra the now. We have a chapter, my clones. So, and you write within that chapter, I'm aware that there were at one time 4 different physical versions of me. Not to say which clones are still living at this time, nor can I state if more have been developed. The nature of what is known about culture is in the above ground consciousness, though those of us who have been a part of these ongoing programs. I guess my question, kind of move forward with it, how are you able to differentiate between the other clones of yourself and which clone is the real you? Are you certain that you and others out there who indicate ultra victims, also mind control victims, are you certain that you and others are the original copy from the clone? How do you know 100% that mind of the truth?
And there was a lot of messing with my consciousness to make me believe that I was in a clone body for years in deep deprogramming. And it's not easy to explain how that process, because it is mostly an internal process. I did have a profound connection in early deprogramming with one of the clones, as in mind connection. I saw her briefly in my mind, and she in that moment seemed to physically react to the connection as well. In other words, she was sensing me. They convinced me by making me believe there were changes in this body that I'm in. In other words, I couldn't see my birthmark. I would have stretch marks, and then I wouldn't have stretch marks. And then there was another anomaly that one of my brothers, when I went back to visit, noticed and brought to my attention. And I was in a very fragile state. I was still in a lot of confusion. And I believed I was in one of the clone bodies. I now know that I absolutely have a soul. And I'm not in one of the clone bodies, and I am the original person. I do believe that the clones are soulless. I don't know exactly how they're animated. I suspect, again, I don't have the inside information of how this is done. I know that clones are absolutely real and in great numbers among us. That I know. I've seen other people's clones, a lot of famous people. There are still doubles also, but there's also clones. The hands and the ears can be telltale signs.
At your order.
There can be differences in those things. That's my understanding. But for me, it again ran into not just, I don't want to call it just intuition, but abilities beyond my five senses to be able to come to these conclusions. I suspect that I can just keep making clones. I mean, I don't think it's a big process at all anymore. I don't think it takes much time at all. But there are varying kinds of clones as well. I'm coming to understand that there are what I don't know if you've ever heard of Donald Marshall.
Yes, I have.
He comes across as, kind of whacked out sometimes, but I have read his book, and I'm going to tell you, this guy's the real deal. Again, let me say this: any of us under mind control, when we're under mind control, are still being influenced or accessed. If we're getting the information we're reporting, if we're getting it 50% accurate, meaning there's truth there, but every detail we give may or may not be spot on. Okay, so always keep that in mind. What I see behind Donald Marshall's work is absolute truth. This guy is the real deal. What he's been through is real. And he breaks down in his book what he calls REM clones. So we've got the physical clones is what I'm talking about. But there's REM clones, which is that state of sleep. And this is very, very real that they are able, I refer to it in the book as pulls, P-U-L-L-S, because I didn't have the language or understand the technology back then. But I've come to actually meet other individuals now that are experiencing the same thing. And I would describe it in my layman terms as this: I'm sleeping in bed. If someone were to walk in the room, my body would be there. I've been pulled out of my body, my consciousness, my astral body has been pulled out. I'm not having a typical dream experience, okay, where we all can leave in the night and have these dream experiences. I'm being pulled out and put in a different body on the other end at some facility or whatnot. So I was very clear that these experiences were happening, and sometimes in the process of going to sleep, I would be jerked out as this process was beginning, and I was vibrating tremendously. And then I knew there were times when the process succeeded and I didn't wake up. And on the other end, I was in a body interacting with other people. They were interacting with me. This was not just a dream state. This was it's extremely lucid. There are physical aspects. You can even come back with physical aspects to your body. The body that's in the bed. In other words, this transfers somehow through the consciousness into the physicality. And there are numerous males that I know that are living this life. And they don't know how to explain it. They're waking up. I know one that was waking up for years with bloodied. He had come out of the bed and was laying face down and blood all over the carpet. All kinds of experiences that are happening. And there is a book by a gentleman, a friend of mine, Ron Allen. I don't know if Alana mentioned it, but 21st Century MKUltra Slave, a vintage transhumanist tale. She did put this book together for him. He's a friend of Ilana's and myself, and this man has been living this for a very long time. And he is in let's call it almost living in a virtual world at night that is, what I can gather, big business. This is the new form of entertainment. And it's very sick. I'm imagining that it's being handled on the dark web to bring clients in. I imagine they're paying great sums of money to participate in his use and abuse, a lot of which is sexual. And it's almost as if it's done, there's physical stuff going on for him, but it's almost done in this virtual world. I really believe this is going to be this is one of the new forms of very sick entertainment. And Donald Marshall talks about cloning centers. He's not the first to talk about cloning centers. There was a ex-MKUltra victim / bloodliner who was raised as a programmer. And she has talked about, this was back in the 90s, she was talking about cloning centers, cloning facilities, that there were whole facilities for this. And she was an insider who woke up and started deprogramming. So this is not new. When they came out with Dolly the sheep, when was that? That was, to me, a revelation to start indoctrinating the public to the idea of a sweet little sheep being cloned. But they've been doing this for some time. This is not new technology.
Yeah, Dolly the sheep, because I have a Time magazine. If I can find it here. Got so much shit. This is from November 8th, 19. I love floating books, magazines. It's from 1993.
Right?
Cloning humans. The first laboratory duplication of a human embryo raised in Russia. This is from 1993.
Right. And we're how many years down the road? 30 years.
Yeah.
30 years. Now, and again...
Well, check this one out. Human cloning, this is from 2001. Human cloning is closer than you think.
Right.
And here's the Dolly the sheep. I believe it's Dolly the sheep. This is from March 10th, 1997. Will there ever be another you?
EWE, right? You.
Yeah.
Yep. No, here's how it works. This is standard operating procedure. This is how it works. When they start telling you stuff above ground, and Time Magazine is one of the best dissemination tools of the elite there have ever been.
What do you like?
When they start showing it to you like this, that means it's already been successful for some time in the black. Okay, for years. So, and then what you're saying, like we saw that 30-year gap between then 1993 and 2023. Think in terms of technology progression, not just in terms of it's 30 years in my life, but 30 years of technological progression. And I'm going to send you, and you can decide whether you want to include it in the show notes, but I'm going to send you something a dear friend of mine sent me just in the last 24 hours regarding AI. I don't think, and this is above ground information. This isn't the in the black, as I like to say. You've got the above ground is the part of when I see certain things come out in the news. What that tells me is it's telling a schedule of the timeline of the agenda. So in other words, it's like a hidden in plain sight message to everyone in the network. This is where we're at now. We're at this stage of the game. Those that are in the know, it doesn't mean everybody. The lower hierarchies don't know what's going on. But those in the higher levels, they can just put it out in the public, and it tells them where we're going, where we're headed. Because when you see stuff like that come out publicly, in the black, I kid you not, a minimum of 50 years advancement.
I was just about to say that. And so 1993 would be, if that's true, and I believe it is, a lot of great minds have looked into this, that would be 2043.
Right.
So what we have today that's come out in the public, what could be in the dark, that would be 83. Or, yes, 2083, right? 50 years from now.
Yeah. So you're... People like me and people like targeted individuals have been experiencing a lot of things that we know have been very productive. Like when people talk about AI is not new. Oh my God, decades ago, people don't realize this, decades ago, programmers stopped being able to handle writing programs because they became so elaborate that the human mind, this is decades ago, the human mind couldn't keep up. So in other words, you had to have, for example, let's take a DoD program, right? And I got this out of a book from a man named Paul Emberson, who they poisoned, by the way, years ago, because he was revealing a lot of what was coming through his studies of Rudolf Steiner and his own incarnation. We'll just say it that way. But he breaks down the whole computer age, and he said, for example, if you take a DoD missile program, so in other words, a program that has to be written, a very sophisticated program that needs to be written for the missiles and so forth, he said they might need 50 people to write this program, and everybody gets a small portion. You write this part, you write this part, you write this, because the human mind can't, this started years ago, the human mind can't comprehend the entire program. So they have all these people, and what was happening was everybody wrote their part, they put it all together, and nobody could look at the entire thing and understand it. Nobody could go through the whole program, so they would pray that nobody made a mistake. Because if somebody made a mistake, the whole program was crap. And this happened over and over. The programs were crap. It wouldn't work. So what did they start doing? They started allowing the computers and the more sophisticated programs to write the programs. Which leads us into D-Wave computers. I'm sure you're familiar with them.
Yeah.
And people don't realize, since D-Wave came out, the original D-Wave, there have been numerous generations. Inside of 1 year, you can have 2 and 3 new generations, which is doubling, quadrupling the capacity of the one before it. So a Chinese company, a Chinese gaming company, just made their CEO AI. They took an AI and made it their CEO because it does better job than they do. We're there.
The best leaders
we are right there. We've got AI systems generating images, photographs that are so real. There's a photographer. He's been like a photographer for like 30, 40 years. He entered a contest with an AI-generated image, didn't tell anybody, it won. It won the contest for the best photograph. And he came out and said, I will not accept the award because this is not real. But this is where we are. This is, I mean, we're there, folks. So when someone is talking about D-Wave, which various intelligence, military, and corporates already have as their systems, they bought these D-Wave. What do you think is going on in the black? And as far as I'm concerned, as soon as I heard about Bluffdale in Utah, NSA facility, I knew there was a beast computer there, underground. This is not just a system above ground. We're there. We're in full-on AI, and AI is one of the things. Just the other day, actually, was it with you, your email? It was our series that we've been going back and forth.
Yeah.
And I sent an attachment, and then you asked me, can you send that, that book? Can you send it? And I said to you, as I was typing your email, to say, I already attached it. When I typed the word attached and I went to send it to you, that I didn't attach anything. Again, I was telling you it was in the previous 2 emails back, right? But when I typed in that I had attached it 2 emails back, and I went to send it, a message came up and said, you said you have an attachment, but you didn't attach anything. And it was like, it was like, wow, okay. I mean, it's thinking for me. My Gmail account is thinking. And I just ignored it. You can override it and send. I didn't have to attach anything, but it's trying to think for me.
What I think is, some experts, here's one note that I have. Some experts have warned that the development of superintelligent AI could result in a power imbalance between humans and machines. With the machines ultimately dominating human decision making, how can we ensure that humans remain in control of the development and deployment of AI? And many researchers talk about post-humanism, how they're trying to do away with our autonomy to where we live in a future dystopian, artificial intelligent, Terminator-type society where machines run everything and we own nothing and we're happy.
Right. And it doesn't, it's going to go here's my take. It's going to go that way. We're already on the road, right? We're going down the road. We're going to go into the machine. People are going to go in to the machine. It's it's part of it. But that's not the end of it. There's something called moral technology. And the man I mentioned earlier that wrote these books, Paul Emerson, literally, I don't know if I should be saying this publicly, but I'm sure it's in the machine because we all talk about it on emails and so forth. Paul Emerson actually had a group, and there is still a group, that is working on what something that's called moral technology. There is going to be a split between the dark and the light. It's happening. We've already seen the symptoms of it in the current day. The jab, the unjab, the splits are already taking place. But there is, all this, people have to face it. This is part of growing up. This is part of being present in your age and being active and proactive, is knowing what's going on, witnessing what's going on, and taking an active, responsible role in what goes forward. And we each do that. We each participate. I say this to people and I say it in the book and people don't want to hear it. What's your responsibility in where things have gotten to? Each of us has a responsibility in our environment, in our world, in our consciousness as a whole. And when we accept that, things will start to change. There will be another path. And there is another path now. I deal with people who are on the other path, the good path, the path that is, aligned with divine evolution as intended for man and the earth and so forth. And if there's a character you may be familiar with him, you may not. He was from the 1800s, John Worrell Keeley.
Yes.
He developed in the 1800s moral technology. He didn't know what he had. He didn't understand how it ran off of him and his morality and his etheric energy. And he got labeled as a fraud because what happened is he took his technology and they were going to industrialize it. He got backing and funding, and well, guess what happened? It wouldn't work because John Worrell Keeley wasn't there to run it from his very etheric energy. This is the 1800s. So they completely discredited him. He went down as a fraud. And the truth is, he was way ahead of his time, because when we move into developing moral technology, and there are people working on this very anonymously and very quietly, what happens with moral technology is if you have any ill intention, if you are not of the highest development of true brotherhood, it won't work for you. That's what happened with John Worrell Keeley's, because the people that wanted to develop this into an industry were not of the right intention, and it would not work.
Yes.
This will happen, and this is, I get goosebumps every time I talk about it. This is part of our eventual evolution. There will be a whole group of people that go that route. And we're all responsible, even now, in starting to set the stage. A lot of the things we're all involved with aren't on the up and up. I mean, it's part of our society, right? So we now have to make the hard choices, Michael. We have to all choose things that feel like a compromise because we're not part of that big system. A small example, just a very small example. My publishers used to be on PayPal. They've left PayPal, which will cost them initially. There will be a little bit of a backlash and moved into another system. because of what PayPal has been doing. They're not on the up and up. I won't touch them. I just won't use it. But that's a small example of we all have to start making those choices. I live very alternatively. I don't have a home. I move around. I don't have a normal form of income, but I know that for whatever reason, I have to do this. This is my path in this lifetime. I'm not saying it's the right one or the wrong one. I'm saying it's when we all know what's morally right. We all know. We understand. We all know when we're choosing. We all choose to do things that go against our morals, at times. But we know it, don't we? And it's not like somebody really has to teach us. It's that I think we just need to be willing more and more into what's happening to us and what's going on around us, that we need to make those choices. We need to make the right choices more and more. And that will feed the whole energy of moving into the proper system.
Well said. This I try to not interrupt, especially when somebody's on the flow, like or on the roll, and you're on the roll here. So with the last few minutes that we have for this time, I'm going to try to get you back on soon because I have a lot of notes and questions, especially from a few of my members on Patreon. So we may be kind of going back and forth here, but here's one of my members' name is Yuri. It's weird. We just brought up Yuri earlier. So, we can pick one of them. Was abuse stemming from... I don't know if that's
Do not disturb my duties.
Let me go ahead. Was abuse stemming from religious institutions limited to the Mormons, or were other religious institutions involved? And what was her family's supposed prescribed religion, or was it a non-religious household?
No, I'd say non-religious. My father was raised as a Baptist. My mother was raised in an Irish Catholic family, but we didn't practice. I remember we went to a Methodist church one time. I guess they were trying to find the middle ground, but nobody was practicing. My father was a pedophile, so there was a lot of dysfunction. I do believe, and I like to leave my family out of it as much as possible because I see them as victims, all of them. Victim come perpetrator, which is how it works. You don't just get a perpetrator, you get a victim come perpetrator. So to control me, my whole family had to be controlled because otherwise somebody would have said, hey, what the hell's going on? Right? So and that's what's happening on a global scale. I'm a microcosm of a macrocosm. They have to control the environment, they have to control everything to make this work. I was, I believe, utilized in adulthood in some capacity in Scientology. I had a job that took me into one of the international headquarters, and some really strange shit happened there. So, but that was years later, as was with Mormon LDS. I had no connections. I was not raised or anything there. I believe my connections to the hierarchy of Mormon was through intelligence, through FBI and CIA. There's a close relationship there as far as I'm concerned with the hierarchy. So there was it was just an extremely, my father, I don't know what all happened to him in his youth, but I did have Navy connections on both my dad and not high level, just enlisted, and on my mother's side. So I think that played a role because at 3 years old, I do have a memory of being used and abused in a really ugly situation, which I wrote about in the book, with men in what I call Navy denims, which was something my father had years ago. It was a denim outfit they used to wear too.
I'd hoped for more.
So yeah, that's my avenue, and I don't remember the other part of the question. Sexual abuse is huge. Sexual abuse of children all the way through is extremely important. Sodomy is important. And there's very esoteric spiritual aspects to that.
What is the agenda behind sex trafficking and pedophilia and all that? Like, what do they, the ones who think they rule this earth, and do these entities have a role in this sex trafficking, pedophilia, and this network.
Absolutely. Other than the general destruction of people, in that format, I mean, it's absolute destruction. There's when it comes to children and what is done to them, and I'm talking even in infancy, it's absolutely astounding. How would I describe it? There's a capturing of that high spirit energy that a child has. Not only destroying it, but capturing it.
Glad to be of assistance.
And this not only feeds those entities, but it allows a level of control. My view is this: what's happening underground to children and adults in these horrific facilities, not only the adrenochrome, but just the overall sodomy, rape, destruction, horrific destruction. Until we address that, we're band-aiding it on the top. So in other words, as long as that keeps going,
How can I help?
that's what these entities come humans at the higher levels understand, that this creates an energy field here, a spell, if you will, that is everlasting. And when you understand that these facilities are all over the globe, they're not just one or two in the United States, they're everywhere. This is creating, we go back to like the egregore and what this creates, which influences all the people that are under its influence. And if they're not aware of this, if people don't understand these things, this is a time for people to understand what the occult and esoteric, what's really going on there. Because if you don't even know it exists, let alone have any ability to apply yourself to it, you are under the influence of it.
Only I could do as much.
Well said, and you said something that made me think of something that really pisses me off. Not you. That we rather put a band-aid over all these atrocities like pedophilia, sex trafficking, human trafficking, everything.
Auntie, please.
That's related.
We have
something that really pisses me off, Lisa, is that it's hard for me to find people, researchers, authors, to talk about these things. A lot of people, what I can't, it really aggravates me when I hear these brilliant minds say, I don't want to go down that road. And that's, like I told you before the show, that's one of the main categories of why my Facebook exploded, my Facebook page, was trying to expose a lot of this. And I hate when people don't want to go down that road, because we as the collective in this community need to fight back against this evil satanic agenda that's going on. And like you said, Band-Aid, this is exactly what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just, we will continue to devolve as a society. If this isn't, if people don't become personally active and feel they have a responsibility, it's not going to protect you. You can gate yourself off somewhere. It's not going to protect you, because society will continue to devolve. So you're not safe. There's nowhere to hide anymore. You're living in the cloud, whether you know it or not.
And I appreciate that.
These things are going on, whether you know it or not. And what I've found, Michael, is it's really hard for people to get on board until it becomes a personal issue.
Until it happens to your child.
Or it comes into your family somehow, or something particular. Yeah. And there's no way of you're not stopping it by avoiding it. It's not going to stop. And there's a responsibility. There's a backlash. There's a backlash. I talk in the book about when does a person become a perpetrator? When do you cross the line into perpetration? And my view is it's pretty hard. If you are exposed to the information and you choose to ignore it, you have now acquiesced and you're working for their side.
And you're part of the problem.
Yeah, whether you know it or not, you're actually helping them. And so the things that you see in the world that you don't like, you're perpetrating them.
And people want to know about this information, Alyssa, because, like I said, I've had several videos on this matter on Facebook, several million views. You know what I mean? People are thirsting for this. Like, what's going on here? But brilliant minds don't want to touch it because they're too afraid to be banned, censored, their YouTube channel be taken down or whatever. You know what I mean? And so let me ask you one more thing before we go. You're one of my members on Patreon, also Yuri, with cloning. I should have asked this a while ago when we was talking about cloning. Cloning supposedly is used extensively within the SSP, I guess, Secret Space Program, to permit assets a gambit of operational locations. Has she
and I'll do it.
Does she have any memories involving the SSP, reptiles, aliens, or Dark Fleet Germans, or any knowledge on that? And we'll leave off right here. So just floor's yours. How are you doing it?
So to me, the secret space program is a double-edged sword. There is a secret space program, but I also see a psyop to dilute the true secret space program with a lot of mind control victims who are coming forward with stories that aren't the secret space program. Okay, they are victims, but not necessarily the victims of what they're relaying. Okay, my personal adamant view of Gray's, all these different types of aliens, and I have had several reptilian experiences, and I absolutely know this to be true. They are not aliens from another star system or planet coming in a ship. These are related to the demonic. They are what we would call sub-earthly beings, sub-nature beings. They are what I refer to as elementals that have been captured by dark forces and are in service to them. They can, at times, manifest physically and also not be physical. So you see them and then you don't. They leave evidence and then they're gone. There is none. You can't collect it, kind of thing. So the secret space program to me is
Stand amongst the righteous.
when some level of truth comes into our world, when people start revealing things, there seems to almost always be a psyop to create a false version so that they can dilute it and muddy the waters. This happened with the Super Soldier program. This happened with the Secret Space program.
The best leaders
and I've tracked this over the years. And I can recognize when I'm looking at someone who's actually under programming. Okay, and then these figures become very prominent in our alternative media with a message, and the message is off cue. And what I call that is containment. So they're revealing there's truth in there, but they're taking you down the wrong path, so that the real truth never really surfaces. And that's containment. They did it with MK Ultra. They did it with, all these programs. So as far as people looking off-world, I can't speak to that. I have been in places in the astral that I know aren't Earth, but that was in the astral. So as far as somebody physically being taken to another locale, I don't know. I don't have experience with that. I do believe that there are probably many within mind control programs who have clones, and how those clones are being used in what form probably varies greatly.
So I have to ask you this, we'll leave off with this. Are you hopeful for the future of mankind, and will we ever see full transparency?
I think the word I would use is I have extreme amounts of faith. Not even just hope, but faith. I absolutely know that there will be a segment of humanity that will go on in its divine evolution as intended. There will also be a large segment of humanity that won't. it's going to go off the other way due to various things like cognitive dissonance and never really developing a true inner life that they can make their choices. And what happens in that is they wind up following a wrong path, whatever's offered to them. And we're seeing evidence of that in our very present day. But I absolutely know that there will be a segment, I can't say how big it'll be, but there will be a segment of humanity that will continue in its divine evolution. And I happen to be a big believer in the fact that when someone leaves this world and moves into what is referred to as the supersensible worlds, you can still work from that aspect in a different capacity. And what we do here is only done here. So if you think you're going to go over there and save the world, that's not how it works. It's what you're doing here right now. And there's in my understanding, there's a very long period of time. We've got thousands of years to work through a lot of things for humanity. So yeah, I have absolute faith that this will occur. But we're going to see a lot of really rough stuff here. It's only begun.
Man, this very fascinating discussion with you. I really appreciate it. It was a treat and honor, privilege. And where would you like people to buy your books? The links will be in the description. But is there anything else that you may want to say before we leave off?
I also have a WordPress site, ourlifebeyondmklultra.wordpress.com. And there is a lot of free information there. You can see the color collages there. There's a link to buy the book, but you don't have to if you don't have the money. A lot of my stuff has been censored. A lot of the videos I had on there have been, taken down. But there's still a lot of information there. And if you're going to buy the book, please go to logosophiabooks.com. As I said, I want to support my small family publishing business. They don't have a lot, and they took a big chance on publishing my book.
I'll certainly try.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Michael. I really appreciate the work you're doing, and I appreciate the medium you're offering for people to come on and speak about things. So thank you.
Please, let me help. Of course. I have hidden myself well.
I shall go forth at your command. Point the sword, and I shall strike.
Just ask. Is that all? Where can I be of? I will do what I can. I have hidden myself well.
What can it be now?
can I help? I can do more if you need.
I have hidden myself well. I have hidden myself well.
I hear you well enough. Long live the Order of the Most Radiant Heart, for I draw from the pool of right and strike in their name.
I have hidden myself well.
Great fun! Right?
Now if you insist.
Your workshop. A skullbreaker. Spark your up. It is a decision I'd make.
Every hamster has his day.
I stand amongst the righteous.
This is what your guts be looking like.
Must get armored, sharpened, and raring. Oh, teach my hamster to suck eggs. Live by the sword. Live a good long time. You point, I punch. Swords, not words.
At your order.
Yes, he's dead.
What is it now? I shall go forth at your command. Point the sword, and I shall... I hear you well enough.
armored. Stand back for justice.
I stand with all speed, comrade.
Who says what?
I'm ready for anything.
At your order.
I have hidden myself well.
What is it now? Ah, it is good to adventure in such a place. The blood quickens knowing that evil is so near. I shall go forth at your command. For honor and glory! Point the sword, and I shall... Helm guides my path.
I have hidden myself well.
A sound suggestion. Yeah, easy enough.
Just ask. Glad to be of assistance.
I have hidden myself well. I have hidden myself well. I have hidden myself well.
Emily here. I'll finish it later. It says,
I have hidden myself.
quit. Hope you enjoyed it. Good night.